Want to thank all of you who have checked out this most recent segment of the Gig Geezer, in which I pointed out a very valid question that involved Venezuelan immigrant Gregorio Amudarian and Washington, D.C. restaurateur Greg Harris, in which Amudarian shared on his TikTok feed how he was being insulted by Harris, and he claimed that he didn't know what he was saying to him. But Harris was widely criticized for his choice of words, leading up to his uh, very famous refrain, learn English. Well, there was more to that segment of the Gig Geezer. I also talked about DoorDash with the genesis of what appears to be a copycat form of Amazon with its delivery service partner program, which is the Amazon vans, and how it could affect the traditional DoorDash independent contractors, that's folk like yourself and I, in which DoorDash is looking to recruit third party vendors, say like myself, who then goes out and hire people as W-2s to deliver DoorDash um, orders. My main reason for doing this segment of the Gig Geezer is to present a follow-up to some of the comments and some of the questions that were raised with that article involving Gregorio and Greg Harris. The follow-up deals with folk asking, well, how can someone who's renting an account, how does someone actually rents an account? That's really what I want to answer the question. Now, a while back in another Gig Geezer segment, earlier this year, I uploaded a Gig Geezer segment in which I highlighted how immigrants or the wave of immigrants contribute to the oversaturation of our markets. And I also pointed out how a Brazilian immigrant by the name of Priscilla Barbosa had earned a very lofty reputation for having earned thousands each month by being the broker of renting gig app accounts to other immigrants and even some Americans who had run afoul with the law and had like DUIs or no insurance. They look for ways of getting back on the gig app accounts so that they can try to earn money. Now, I want to make this clear. I'm all for people earning a living. I'm all for someone who comes to this country legally and go through the proper channels legally and look to earn a living, basically playing by the rules that are set. Although I know, having been on this earth for decades now, I know that all rules are not fairly applied. But in the spirit of things, I know that if I went to, say, Brazil, a place that I would love to go to, I know that if I were to be a positive contributing uh, visitor of the country who looks to become an expatriate, I would have to go about things the right way, or I may find myself being asked to leave a place that I really want to be. So, how then does someone rents an account? I want to first share what is the impact when someone attempts to rent an account or provide, or like someone like Priscilla Barbosa, who is that broker, that liaison, that conduit in providing these fake accounts to someone like, it may not be Gregorio Amadarian. We don't know if he uses a fake account, but suffice it to say, if it ain't him, there are others. Okay. So, what are some of the negative effects of that? First of all, it's a form of identity theft and fraud. Secondly, those the social security numbers that are used are tracked to someone, or as in the case of Priscilla Barbosa, she was just good with or lucky with figuring out a series of numbers social security numbers that had not yet been used, but somehow they were valid enough for DoorDash, UberEats, Lyft, and Instacart. They were valid enough for them to um, to meet their onboarding criteria, including passing a background check. Go figure. But let's say if someone, and I'll explain how someone could actually use your ID, but let's say someone were to have somehow got a hold of my social security number. You do realize when a person earns over $600 in a year as an independent contractor, you're going to get a 1099 statement. And there are some articles out there from 2020, 2021, basically from the same source though, but they talk about how people received 1099s from places like Uber, and they never ever had anything to do with the place. Now they're faced with a tax obligation that they have to jump through micro hoops with the IRS in order to prove that they had never ever had done anything or had anything to do with Uber or Uber Eats, or let's say DoorDash or Lyft and the other apps. I'm going to read a few paragraphs from this article that is dated February 25th, 2020. And the title of it says IRS issue warning as Bay Area workers receive 1099s from Uber, even though they've never driven a rideshare. And so it goes on to say how the IRS is issuing a warning about a new scam that the tax agency has never seen is hitting the Bay Area. Now, I'm going to compare that to many decades ago when I lived out on the West Coast as well, when folks were describing how if you drove on a certain stretch of highway at nighttime, you could be robbed at that stoplight. Well, about a year or two later, what we were just describing happening, there was a name that was affixed to it, carjacking. So anyway, the article goes on to say gig workers and other independent contractors are receiving 1099s from companies they've never worked at. If this happened to you, the IRS warns you need to take action. And it goes on to say a guy from San Carlos, California, supposedly earned 21,000 working 3 months for Uber. Now that's a little alarming and unexpected because I don't work for Uber, the guy said. Another guy said he supposedly, another way of saying that, made 36,000 driving 4 months for the ride sharing company. And then he says, not if I'm flat on my back, because at the time of the reported employment, he was on disability receiving chemotherapy for lung cancer. Yet both received 1099s saying that they'd worked for the company. So then they posed the question, how do I explain to the IRS that I wasn't working? How do I prove it? It's going to be hell, the guy said. And so the IRS, when contacted, said it strongly suspected that both victims were both men were victims of identity theft. So that is what happens when these people rent these accounts. That is some of the fallout from people renting these accounts. Some of you say, "Well, live and let them do what they can." This is what happens. So you go about doing something like that with no consequences? No, it doesn't work like that. A year later, the same news TV station came up. A year later, that TV station had another round of reports on people receiving 1099s for work they had not done on the Uber app. And in this article, it says the guy and his mother didn't know what to make of it. Uber sent him a 1099 indicating he made just under $6,000 working for the company. And he says, I've never worked for them. Why would I get the 1099 if I've never worked for a company? And then his mother tried reaching out to Uber, but couldn't get a human being until she pretended to be an employee. And even then, she didn't get that far. I can't speak with her supervisor. I can't speak with anyone in accounting, his mother said. And then there's a reference to an article from a year ago. So yes, this and this is just two examples, and those are on the West Coast. But there are other stories out there where people have reported this in recent years. You can also go to the IRS, irs.gov, and put in a search about um, employment-related identity theft, and then it will tell you, it will give you steps of what you need to do to prove to the IRS that you did not earn that money. Because the bottom line is, if if the IRS basically says that you're on the hook for that, now you've got to account for that extra income. And that could mean you having a higher tax obligation. So for many of you who may work a W-2 and just use, I'll put it like this. If you are just a W-2 and you're looking to make your usual you're looking to receive your usual refund or whatever that amount is. Now if you receive a 1099 that you're on the hook, you may end up having to pay the IRS because you've not paid enough in taxes to offset your tax obligation based on income. So so then the question is, how then do these people come up? How then do these people um, rig up these accounts and then turn around and rent them out? Now I go back to the article featuring Priscilla Barbosa. Priscilla Barbosa first started uh, cheating, cheating or creating fake accounts after she had found a rider's ID. She went she went in an attempt to return the ID to the rider, but because the rider did not treat her in a more appreciative and friendlier manner, she made a mental note of that person's ID. And one evening around Christmas, say like 2016, 2017, she decided to tinker around with the Uber um, driver portal and see if she can get onto Uber. All right, so I'm going to read exactly from the article that features Barbosa. And this is exactly how, by her account, how she began to toy around with the Uber driver portal and created these bogus accounts that she ultimately began using. So first, she tried a series of social security numbers, and she tried one that started with 776-94, and that one worked. Maybe it was assigned after 2011. She entered the combination while making a new driver account. When Checker, a company that does background checks for Uber, emailed asking for her to verify the number, Barbosa simply plugged it in again. Then Checker sent whatever information it gathered to Uber, and her account was approved. So then the article goes on to say she also met people with pictures of real licenses to sell, and she spotted another opportunity. By buying a license and adding in her simple social security trick, she could create a new driver account on Uber and Lyft en masse. She set rent at the price she previously paid, about $250 a week, and then business took off. Word got around, more people pinged her WhatsApp account wanting their own profiles. By late summer, with some 8 renters bringing her in about 2,000 a week, she stopped driving. So she had 8 accounts at $250 a week. People were paying her. So she was making up close to $10,000 a month just on people paying her for these bogus accounts. Now, she figured that she'd gotten lucky on her own slapdash Uber account that she'd hatched on Christmas. Now she found a client. She registered a burner phone number on TextNow and an encrypted email with Proton Mail. Uber seemed to have gotten more discerning, so if her customer looked nothing like the person on the driver's license, she photoshopped the customer's face in place of the original. That way, when the app prompted them to take a selfie as a security spot check, they would pass. She also photoshopped the name from the license onto the customer's insurance documents. Ever organized, she kept an Excel spreadsheet with each account's details. Now, she says that it never crossed her mind that she was like being a criminal. In a car business, you say after the deal has been after the deal has been funded, somebody in the office, in the corporate office, was going through the deals and siphoning people's um, uh, IDs, because you have to take a picture of your driver's license and your social security number information, especially if the deal was financed. But anyway, other pictures are bought off the dark web. Some people in the underground driver's license economy in Maryland or California would snap a photo of the licenses before mailing them out to their out-of-state immigrant clients, and then rent or sell those photos to people like Barbosa. Now you see how it's being done. Now she's rationalizing she wasn't stealing money and she had certain standards, but she didn't buy licenses off of a guy who reportedly pulled insurance fraud by running into people's bumpers and photographing people's ID um, when you're exchanging information and all. So she felt like she was being a business person, an entrepreneur. So hopefully I have answered that question. I know that I spent several minutes talking about this though, but hopefully I have answered a question in the Gig Geezer segment that I last uploaded. So if you like the content that's been provided in this segment or in any other segment of the Gig Geezer, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I'm Inwood Lane, as always. May your grind and may your hustle continue.